he took the chicken and he kissed it. And everyone laughed.
Look, hi, welcome everybody to the Vibe Union podcast, episode number 29.
Woo.
I'm MQ. This is
Amuda.
and we have a very special guest today, Strictly DT.
What up, guys? Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. Thank you for coming.
Of course,
it's such a pleasure.
Yeah, you guys live far, but it's well worth it. The place is beautiful. I like the setup. It's nice.
Thanks, man. Look, before we get rolling, it is super critical that we recognize what a privilege and what a joy it is that we get to do all of this. And we would not be able to if not for the careful and very deliberate custodianship of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation for eons and generations preceding ours before colonization. And unfortunately, sovereignty was never ceded. And even to this day, there's dominion enacted over the indigenous peoples of this land, and an assumption that just because people have more technology or some kind of nonsense that entitles them to something, I think is detrimental and destructive. Let's be a part of that solution, and I think one of the critical ways we can do that is pay our respects to indigenous elders, past, present, and emerging, because of the wisdom that they've had with land, connection with country, and how to build better communities together. So
I love that, man. You killed that. You know, I mean, I
Every
only say
time.
that.
Every
Yeah.
time.
The only reason I say that is because I've had not a problem, but I've always thought people who use that generically made acknowledgement, I don't feel it as much. And like when I hear people say the same thing, and it almost seems like, let's just get this out the way before we move on.
Yeah.
But the way you did that was really incredible. I like that. I really like that. I try and change it up myself, but the way you did that was amazing.
I appreciate that, man. It's it took a lot of reflecting for me, and it was during high school when I was cynical as hell. Right? It was like I don't believe that this achieves anything. Why bother? Right? These people are not going out and engaging in the community and stuff like that. And I was, a real hater on the acknowledgement. And then after,
as in like you were against the acknowledgement?
Because I just thought it was tokenistic and performative.
Yeah.
And ticks a box.
Yeah.
But then also. And then upon, reflection over the last 10 years, kind of since that, recognizing that, okay, but what am I doing? How am I engaging the community? How am I educating myself? So then I went deep and I kind of understood or tried to understand better, like, what is the intention behind it? What are we trying to do? Right. And so in any of these, I like to at least bring that connection back to like, what is the ground beneath our feet? Like, what is the history that brought us to this moment? And recognizing where, a mote of dust in this stream that continues, and it goes from way back and it goes all the way forward. So
that's amazing.
Thanks for recognizing that, man. I appreciate it. And again, like I'm open to feedback. Like I know that there is more that any of us can be doing. So if there's anything out there, anyone knows, like, please, I'd love to get further education. One thing I do want to do is learn language and then be able to share that. So actually introducing and connecting people to the culture. Yeah. So whether it's an awareness of particular plants, whether it's just the names of things, greetings, or ways to relate within the culture and within the community, I want to understand those better. And I say that fully aware that I could have researched more. Yeah. But I feel like that could help at the start of things to just go.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's always good. It's always good to help where you can.
Yeah.
I've spent about a year trying to figure out ways I can help, even if it was to give some of my time. But I've come down to actually giving a percentage of my merch sales, like any CD sales, shirts that gets sold on the website or even at shows. I take a percentage of that out and I donate it to Children's Ground, which was a community of people who help the indigenous people, the children from young up to adulthood, and it's run by indigenous people. And I was as I was studying their website and making sure that it goes to them, it seems like Children's Ground were a great way for me to connect my music to, because that's what I usually make my music for, is for the mature people, but also for kids that could try and enjoy some sort of education as well as music as the entertainment. Which is also the downfall of why I'm not the most popular MC because it's like I'm doing it with a purpose. Whereas if I was to go down the route of, the party scene, it would be a whole different.
But wouldn't be as satisfying to the soul.
Of course. I'm constantly trying to figure out ways of, going back and forth on it. I don't want to be the whole preacher rapper
For sure.
type of guy. I do like to have fun. I love Schoolboy Q. I love listening to ratchet music. I love listening to all that stuff. So I'm trying to figure out ways where I can incorporate music like that, where I can actually have some fun as well as, have the songs that are, educational and, get people thinking in a different perspective.
I think a really powerful example of that is A Goods. Like that track you just put out, man, it's a banger. Like it has all of the hallmarks of a song that you can just chuck on and really vibe out to all together. And then you sit there with the lyric sheet and you're like, this is real. Like this is happening. This is happening in our communities, in our society right now. Can you, like, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that process for you. Like how did you go about coming up with that concept, researching and putting that together as a piece?
Well, it actually just started with watching the Australian Dream documentary.
Right.
Me and my wife are sitting down and we've been told a few times by friends, close friends, that you need to watch it. And it had it on the list. And it I think the third person hit us and was like, you guys have to watch this. And I'm like, all right, tonight we're sitting down. We're going to watch this documentary start to finish. Excuse me. And when we started it, I was just blown away. I was like, this is exactly what I've been feeling, but not being able to put into words about what I see when I watch, the AFL sometimes, and how people act around people and how they can't quite see the blank racism that's in a lot of what people are saying. When Adam was getting called a monkey and he got triggered by that, a lot of people don't really know that feeling of what that word actually means. I mean, of course, the people say, "Oh yeah, it's just an ape, it's an animal," but it's not. It's much deeper than that. We were actually. What's the word? We were actually
classed.
Classed as an ape. Then way back then. I mean, I'm talking about this is the Aboriginal people, but even in America, this is where I see the connection between America and Australia. And that's where I was saying I've been making music for Americans because that's where I come from. I see that, and I wanted to create something for our backyard because I'm a blatant believer. I'm a huge believer of working on your backyard before we go out trying to fix other countries. And I've been here for 15, 16 years now. So Australia is just as much my home as America is.
How has being in Melbourne influenced that perspective, or what you're actually trying to achieve? Has it influenced the way you approach music?
As in, say, so...
being here and immersing yourself in the culture in Melbourne and finding those connections, has that changed the way you put across ideas? Has it influenced it in any way?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this would have to go back towards when I first started rapping, and I was rapping in Perth. And when Perth, at the time when I was 17, that's 2007 and 8, 9, I was starting to get out there more, and it wasn't as, culturally diverse, I would say. So I was rapping to people who were listening to Aussie hip hop a lot. And me I couldn't understand it for a long time. It took me being here for 7, 8 years for me to say, I get it. I understand. I used to think that they were just complaining about nothing, but pain is pain. Yeah. Depression is depression. You can't put a level on it and say, well, you're not depressed because this person's more depressed than you. So when I shifted that and started seeing why they were upset and why they were depressed in their own right, I can see it in their music. And I'm like, all right, I have been ignorant to what they were going through. And even though it may not relate to me, I can respect where they're coming from and why they do that and why they relate their their barbecue hangs, because it's really close to them. It's considered family to them. And that's where I can say, all right, I fuck with it. I was I may not be a part of it, but I fuck with it.
Yeah.
And then going out from there, it started getting diverse. I mean, in the last maybe 5 years, I'm seeing it grow into something way more than, they call it bogan rap. I don't call it that, but
Sure.
I call it, I know that their hip hop is different to, say Sampa the Greats, say Remy and these guys, they're different, but that's the beauty of hip hop. Being able to accept other cultures, and as long as we're being ourselves is the key to, understanding other cultures. Just like society in itself.
It's such a parallel to, I think, what we've all been appreciating. Hip hop especially, but music in general, creates this sort of central meeting point that we can exchange ideas around. And it's the willingness of a listener to go, cool, this is what I normally listen to. And then, all right, this Strictly DT guy is making a track. It's called A Goods. I know that guy. He plays footy. I listen to, I watch a bunch of footy on the weekend. So for them to come and engage and play around with that concept is powerful. So I think that need to put in a message and need to lead and be message forward as an artist, like I really resonate with that. And I guess either of you, like, at what point did it kind of click over? Or have you always like wanted to inject messaging into your music?
Do you want to go first?
You're more than welcome to.
I've always, I could say I've found hip hop multiple times in my life. When I first started rapping, it was just, only punchlines, really dark raps, and I come from Seattle, so Seattle is the home of grunge, and grunge is very dark, depressing, and I actually blame the weather, if you ask. I say the weather is what makes us so dark, and like all the rappers and all that, so I was off that for a long time, and that's how I got to meet Hopsin and all of like Swizz and the Funk Volume crew, and it grew from there because all of us rap the same. And then I started getting into, the East Coast side of hip hop, which when you're born and raised in, like, say, Seattle or LA, around that time, obviously, we're still kind of affected by the Biggie Pac stuff, and we only listen to West Coast. So our godfathers were E40, Keek the Sneak. I loved Brother Lynch Hung, and he's like a really dark rapper. But it was like that. And then when I moved here, they loved East Coast. They loved, Biggie. They loved Mobb Deep and all that. So I was like, all right, let me hear it out. And then it just opened up a whole nother world,
Wow.
Most Def and KRS-One. I was like, okay, so this was obviously the birth of it. And I needed to understand more about where it all come from. So it's in full circle, like hip hop, again, I wouldn't have met none of you guys. I wouldn't have met Deets if it wasn't for hip hop, because we share a common denominator here.
Yeah.
And we get to understand each other's lives through the common sense of, not common sense, but the common denominator, which is hip hop. So it's like when you come rapping in Arabic, I'm like, that's dope. Because that's you, and you go in and out of it, or if you just bring your culture into hip hop, you've added a new spice to everything. Just like the Aussies do their justice to hip hop, and just like Africa, you've got everywhere. Japan, they all do it, and we can all relate to it. I've listened to mad Japanese rap songs, right? Don't know a single word, but I could feel what they're doing. So
sure. I appreciate you calling that out. So for me, it's bringing my Sindhi language into my raps and sharing of my culture. It's kind of like when you bring that mate that you really love and or your younger brother or something to that party, and you're like, hey guys, like I feel like this person will really add to the mix here. Like when we invite people to Lyrebird Lounge and stuff like that, you're like, it's not that I want you to see this. I don't necessarily want my Pakistani family and stuff like that to engage with hip hop necessarily. I want hip hop in this world and other people outside of it to engage with what my family and what my culture is about. But I guess that's quite hip hop centric. Like Amutha, like as a musician, with the way that you sort of express yourself, that doesn't necessarily fall into hip hop, but by hanging out with what a lot of VU's been doing, you've been able to bring a lot of that into it. How have you found that experience, and have you felt like it's been welcomed? How do you feel within the hip hop sphere specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Vibe Union like does it a bit different, and I think because we're very inclusive, I feel like I'm part of a community. So you know, it's not necessarily. Well, I actually enjoy doing the hip hop, even though like I like what I create. I just make really weird experimental music, but like it gives me an opportunity to kind of go outside of my comfort zone and maybe access a part of myself that I wouldn't regularly access, which is I guess more like dominant, or I won't say aggressive because that sounds negative, but just that like riled up energy.
Confidence.
Thank you. Yeah, perfectly put. So yeah, I think like just for that, I think like Vibe Union has been, just opened like a whole different facet of who I am.
Do you sing?
I do sing, yeah.
I don't know I haven't heard any of your music, but I'm getting vibes of, have you heard of Artie?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna link you then tell me if it sounds anything like that, your music, or you can just send me some stuff too, because just from like just your vibe, it kind of feels like you and Artie are kind of in the same air, like in the same realm. But I haven't heard any. I can't say that because I haven't heard your music yet. But I'm just saying from the vibe that you're getting off, and you're saying experimental and all that. I was like, I wonder if she knows Artie.
Yeah,
she's a really good
I think this name has been floated past me earlier this week.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
At the Push Studio.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So I will definitely check this out.
I'll have to link. She's a very amazing, like, I don't even know what to call it. Like, I don't know. I know it's experimental, but like it just, I when I went to her show, she's just she just creates an aura inside of the room, and you just kind of feel good.
I mean, that's Amutha to a T.
Thank you.
Yeah, massively. All right, well, yeah, you'll send us a link. By the time this episode goes up, there'll be a little thing up over DT's head that people can click. Like, shouts out Artie. We're suckers for like that reference, and it's not just keep it to one person. Like they've obviously had an impact on you, and you know, for anyone watching along, like please go check it out. Let us know if you think Artie and Amutha are similar, different, same but different. We go from there.
Also, shout out to Ralph Rad, who produced A Goods, which we've been working on. We've worked together. He's pushed my pen to different realms just with his production. So when I've been telling him like, oh, there's this documentary I just watched. I'm feeling really inspired. He's like, I'm going to send you a beat. And then he sent me the A Goods beat, and he didn't know what I was doing with it.
Right.
But he's like, I made this and I thought of you. So here, throw it in there and just see if it comes up. And that's how A Goods came about.
Wow. And
then we wanted to get someone involved in the track as well. Cause I was like, I did 2 verses, but I could do a third, but I don't want it to be, I just wanted to include someone else. So we got Molly Jose, who is from Perth, and he's a really dope up and coming rapper from Perth, and he's just killing it in the moment. So I was like, I can't hear anyone else on it but you, and if you don't do it, then I'll just do the third verse. And he said, I'd love to, and got involved, and he smoked that verse, and he did really well.
Phenomenal. All about opening up space and the shouts out. There was an opportunity for me to shout out Dingo's Breakfast. Do you have some background? Do you want to chat a little bit about Dingo's Breakfast real quick?
I will talk about like the chef himself, the main man, Angus, I believe his name is. He just we recently as in, you know, yesterday we spent about 10 hours at Radio Bar doing a DJ gig with MCs coming through. I was doing some live art for pretty much the entire day. I think I took about one break that lasted about 20 minutes, but the rest of the time I was just painting.
Painting this massive wall.
Huge wall canvas. We'll
show you afterwards, man. It's
it was wild. And basically the whole time, like, he was just giving me a lot of emotional support. He was there with me and like providing food for me, and just and like the food was amazing as well, all vegan. So yeah, Dingo's Breakfast.
Yeah.
Incredible guy and incredible like energy.
The reason he comes to mind as well is because his own Indigenous background and heritage, he incorporates that into his menu. So there's obviously the vegan options and alternatives, but then, you know, like traditional recipes of kangaroo skewers and things like that.
Wow.
And it is delicious, man. Like, as someone who does eat meat and like has had kangaroo before and been kind of like, it's a gamey novelty. This is like, okay, cool. This is the stuff.
They did it right.
He does it right, man. And what I love is that culture and that heritage that he has, he weaves that obviously into the food, but then also in the way that he engages, the sense of community and family that he has with Paul and Karen behind the bar and the rest of the staff, and then everyone that comes through for the events. So
so inclusive. Like he just makes you feel like you're at home. You're like his part of his family. Like he's just
That's
such
dope.
a lovely human. Yeah.
and
What's his nationality?
he's Aussie, sort of born and raised, and then does have Indigenous heritage.
Oh, cool,
Indigenous
cool.
Australian.
So it's like an actual, like as an Indigenous, like
Yeah.
real. Oh, that's ill.
That's it. And it's in no way performative. He's really like, there's 5 things on the menu. 2 of them have vegan options.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's
Dude,
just like, this is
I love
recipes
that
I
about
have.
places. I think we need to make that a thing, you know?
Yeah.
You get a menu with 20 things and they're only good at 5 of them.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
That's
The rest
it.
of them are just there so you can buy it. But like
Yeah.
if you can master five items on the menu and know that each one is fire.
Yeah.
Like
which they all were.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like why not just stick with that? People will come back for that, you know. We all
Yeah.
go back for pizza.
Yeah.
Like if we know what pizza we like,
Yeah.
we go back to it. So I like that. I want to try that. Where is it?
Radio Bar in Fitzroy.
Fitzroy.
It's
Man, y'all are all far, man. Just say somewhere southeast for one.
we'll try and find you a spot, man, somewhere near Caulfield. But yeah, look, I just really wanted to shout out Angus, and again, it was born out of that conversation we started with about how do we incorporate and cooperate with Indigenous cultures in the modern day. It's not purely tokenistic, not, of course, apologizing and reconciliation are critical, but reconciliation means let's bring our paths back together. Let's reconcile, like, what we're doing and share our futures together. So I think Dingo's Breakfast, Radio Bar together are doing that incredibly well. And there's a bunch of venues around Melbourne doing that. So shouts out to everyone doing it right in a great way. I guess I love what we sort of touched on and how we've been going. And I guess like it's been leading up to a conversation around a recent post that you made, DT. You put out there that you'd had this experience with some co-workers around language and hip hop. And I guess like we've all kind of experienced some degree of cultural dysmorphia. I went and made a whole Fringe show, song and dance about it last year.
Oh, nice.
But I think we've all felt it difficult to integrate into Australian society in a way, but then let alone hip hop within Australian society. So I guess I wanted you to share the story, if you don't mind, with everyone listening and watching, and then would love to discuss it with you beyond that.
For sure. Well, it wasn't just one incident. I guess it was like it happens throughout my whole, life. But in these scenarios, it happened once or twice in a span of a week. So like usually one thing will happen, maybe something small, but I would just kind of let it go and then I'd recover. But then it was like this happened, then this happened, then maybe something I saw on Instagram, like, and all of that kind of really just kind of. It just broke me down, and I just made a post about it because I didn't know what else to do. And I was like, I don't want to complain, but I really felt strongly that something needs to be said, or at least the conversation needs to be said. And then first, I'll make it clear that they're not my coworkers. They're just other tradesmen that happen to be working for other companies while I was there. So if it were my coworkers, I would have definitely brought it up because that's a different conversation. If we're going to be working together, I need them to know where the line is with any of that. But because
sorry, not to take away from the gravity of the situation at all, but you are a contractor and you do tiling work.
So I have 2 jobs in that sense. I work for myself as a tiler. My business is called Tyler the Creator.
That's what I wanted to shout out. I just think it's the coolest shit ever. Yeah. Sorry, do go on.
And then I team up with another company, Aquavision, who fill in my days that I am available.
Cool.
And they do cleaning and sealing natural stone and man-made stone. And so we go to a lot of different properties throughout the year, and they do some amazing houses, millions dollar houses. And so everything's done properly, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to. I'm sitting here cleaning up concrete walls while other guys are doing, the fixtures in the ceilings and all of that. So.
Sorry to distract. I really wanted to get to Tyler the Creator. I think that's the coolest shit.
No, it's really it's funny because a lot of the jobs I do get are hip hop heads as well.
Right. Yeah.
So they were like,
so
based off the name, I really do like it. And then they check out the page and then they say, all right, cool, you can actually do the thing. So it's funny. It's funny how that works.
Dope, man. Sorry, coming back
that's
to
right. So now I'm cleaning and the radio's on. They're playing Triple J. I usually have headphones in, keep to myself. Don't do too much because there's a whole, like I said in the post, a whole tradie culture that I don't identify myself as a tradesman because of what everyone has a bad rap with tradesmen. They don't like them like that, but I am a tradesman. So I'm cleaning and then the radio's on, Triple J's playing, and what's the song? Gold Digger comes on by Kanye West.
Yeah.
And fortunately they had the edited version on, but because everyone knows the song, they were singing the unedited version and, throwing the N-word here and there in the hook, which I'm like in my head while the song is coming on and I'm thinking the hook is about to start. I hope no one actually says it. And they say it.
And did it feel like they were a little bit bashful coming into it, or was it like we get to say it now?
No. It was more just like, they're just singing the song, right? But what I've noticed is they later found out or just remembered that I was working there. And I had my headphones on, so I could hear, but I actually wasn't listening to anything at the time. But they saw that I was working there, and then they edited themselves. So that to me tells me a few things, like you are aware or you weren't aware that I was there, can say it when I'm not there, but then, he's here, I better switch it up.
There's definitely an awareness of the wrongness of it.
Yes,
it's
that's
just
right.
that there's an assumption that there are spaces in which the wrongness isn't as bad.
Yeah. So I didn't approach this dude because I was finishing up anyway, and I kind of just left it at that and didn't bother, doing anything. Got the job done, left it, and I'll even put this: the Aquavision themselves, they are so behind whatever I'm about, and they are been the best people to work with, and they have nothing to do with any of these people. And of course, whenever I think about pulling this up with people, or even like my higher power, like the people who I work with and all that, even them, if they were to take it to someone other company, it would probably die there.
Right.
Because of the lack of empathy towards other cultures and how bad it actually is. But then again, and this is where my brain thinks, my brain constantly thinks of other angles, trying to figure out other perspectives. We created the music. Now, we created the music for us.
Yeah.
But we are giving it to labels who are distributing it to the entire world.
Sure. It's no longer a mixtape getting handed out
in your community.
Yeah.
That's right. So then I'm like, well, I know this is why I don't use the N-word in my music anymore. If you go back far enough, you will hear it. And I came to a conscious decision that I'm in Australia.
Yeah.
I'm making music, and even in my community, there's white people. So who am I to say you can't say this? And this is just a perspective. Look, everyone else can, I'm not against black people making black music, saying the N-word or not. I'm more just saying, for me, this is me and my mind thinking we're not going to get anything done, or we're not going to change anything unless we start within ourselves to get there. Some people don't agree with that, and others do. That's the beauty of hip hop, being able to choose what we want to do and what we don't. Yep. But we can't fight everybody who says the N-word because they're saying it in a song. You call me an N-word, that's a different story. Right. Then I'm starting something. Then I'm gonna take this up, and we're going to solve this.
Yeah.
But this was where this is why I chose consciously not to say anything. He's just singing a song, without the awareness.
I'm just interested to know your perspective on this because, because you're saying, it would be nice if they introduced some kind of policy around racial awareness. Yeah. But then the other thought there that comes up for me is but they're not really learning anything through that. They're just being told rules that they got to abide by,
That's right?
So my question to you would be, how do you, at the root, get someone to understand the significance or the weight that those words carry?
Yeah, that's a really, it's a deep question because it doesn't start at the trade industry.
Right.
You know, it's somewhere else. And I haven't quite figured, I don't have the answer to that. All I know is that, you know, the trade industry is a whole nother realm. Like a tradesman doesn't act like a tradesman in his own home.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's where it's kind of hard to say, like, when are you this person and when are you this person? You know, you should if you know that it's wrong to be like that here, why do you think it's right to do it there?
Right.
You know, and this isn't just about race. This is about anything, you know, politeness, you know, people, like, I don't know, there's just a different vibe, you know, and even it even goes to construction workers when they're working and they see like a female walking by that's going to work and get completely stared down as they walk by, you know? And that's another thing that's just like, where does that come from? You don't do that when you're at home. You go home to your wife. It's almost like if you haven't seen someone, you haven't seen a woman in your life, like when you're working in construction. So I couldn't even imagine what it'd be like to be a female in the trade industry.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe these individuals are less reflective on their own behavior when they're in a mob? Do you get that mentality of like is it different? Because as a female, I can't even really speak on the topic. But do you feel like boys individually versus in a group act differently or think differently, process information differently? Do you feel like you need to one up each other and like, you know? I'm just spitballing.
For sure. I've seen it a lot. I mean, I have been in different contexts, and this is part of a sporting team, you know, in a group chat of that sporting team, a sales team where it's predominantly men, where I've been working, a lot of different contexts. It's in musical circles, so hanging out with a lineup of pretty much all men at a hip hop gig, and we're all just hanging out, and I'm trying to chat, like, you know, network, hey, what's up, da-da-da. Oh, hey, do you know that bird over there? Blah, blah, blah. She, da-da-da. And it's like, is that like why we're all here? Like, didn't you like roll up with your girlfriend? Like, you know, what has flipped since you gave her a peck on the cheek and came over to talk over here that does this? And I'm blessed. I count myself really lucky. I'm more than happy to wear it as a sign of arrogance for the guys that struggle with this. Like, my mum raised me right. Like, she told me that there is a level of respect that should be afforded to all people regardless, but recognize that women do have it tough. Like, she was someone who came out here when she was 18 and already had a kid, not a lick of English to her name. She would take me out, you know, in a stroller and go for walks or go to the shops and things. Like, she copped harassment for any number of reasons on top of the language barrier. Yeah. And so for her experience to have been that, and for her to be strong in herself and share that with me and say, like, these are the things that would happen, or like we'd be home alone and someone would like come to work on something in the house or something like that, that dynamic can be really quickly flipped from a professional relationship to not. It's just like, oh, cool. Like, women already have it insanely tough. What kind of guy could I possibly be? What kind of a fellow human could I possibly be if I were to make things tougher on someone? And all I have to do is like not vocalize the like animalistic part of me. Like, every now and then you can see food in a window. You don't like break the window to like grab whatever's in there, right? Like, that isn't. But you might have that. I don't know. Maybe I'm a Hannibal-esque like crazy animal. But like, the thought might occur. It doesn't mean that you need to verbalize, and act on it. And I think there's something about, we're all men here. We can talk about this thing. Check out the da-da-da. And you're like, personally, that doesn't fly for me. And so usually I'll either go silent, which I hate myself for in the moment, where like, why did I not speak up and say that was bad?
Because you'll get ostracized.
There's definitely that fear. But more recently, I've begun to own this sense of like, trying to reply with something sardonic, a little bit witty, a little bit sarcastic.
That's right.
To call them in. It's like we're still having banter.
Do you hear yourself? Like,
exactly in that vein.
That's exactly, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and one thing I find is if you can make that comment, I'm a huge sucker for like, if there's 7 people in a conversation and there's 3 people that are silent, how do I say something to the really loudmouth guy that's going to make the 3 people who have been silent the whole time recognize that like, I see their silence, right? How do we bring more people back into the conversation? And so then when a comment like that gets made and there's 2 guys out of 6 that are like super misogynistic and the other 3 guys are being quiet. That was quick maths, by the way. And the other 3 guys are super quiet. How do I engage these 2 guys on this and kind of like have a dig at them that might empower one of the other quiet guys
to tease it on, to jump on, and you know, you're kind of like flipping it back onto them.
Yeah.
So that others will then try, because there is a slight culture of like, teasing and guys like, ripping into each other, but like being able to use it against them.
Yeah.
I hear exactly how you're saying. I'm trying to think of an example, but I can't think of it at the time, but
No,
I
exactly.
get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's the way, we've kind of avoided, having the real conversation.
Exactly.
And using it as a coping mechanism,
Yeah.
My therapist told me, he's like, you haven't actually, he said, you use all these different things to deal with, instead of, sorry, I'm trying to remember how he said it, because I know I'll butcher it because he's really good. He said that you've used other coping mechanisms to avoid being angry because you were raised seeing anger mean violent.
Right.
Powerful.
So he's like, you can acknowledge that you're angry without being violent. He said, but you see, because you were raised, you saw your family get angry and fight each other, like physically fist fight each other. You identified that as angry.
Right.
So then I'm like, well, then I don't ever want to be angry.
Right.
But that's not healthy either. So he's like, this is the same thing. It's like we've used a coping mechanism that will help get us by, but it's not solving the problem.
For sure.
And you can't solve a problem if two people aren't willing to have the conversation. So again, it goes back to your first question is, what do we do? It's almost as if like we just say all of us are duds and we start with the kids.
Right.
Yeah, but I think something that you guys, like, as you were bouncing off one another, I thought was really significant was just creating that dynamic of someone makes a comment and you really just let them sit with what they've said and like acknowledge. So this is interesting. I actually had an experience at a radio bar where a gentleman walked in who I had been told previously, who he was talking to a few other friends, that he was quite misogynistic and he was making some really inappropriate comments. And I said, thank you for letting me know. I don't want this to like manipulate the way I perceive him. I want to remain open to the person that he is. I don't thank you for letting me know, but I'm going to continue to remain open, and I'd like to have an open communication. I'd already established a really good relationship with him. He walked in, we had a nice conversation. I didn't catch that vibe at all.
Yeah.
So as I'm painting, he comes up to me and he starts talking and he's looking at me. He's like, so where are you from? And I said, my mom's vagina. And he literally had nothing to say.
Yeah.
And I'm still painting and I'm like, I'm joking, man. Like, what do you mean? I don't actually understand that question. What do you mean by that? And he's kind of fumbling over his words and he keeps going. He's like, just like, people are popping up from everywhere. And I'm letting him. Yeah, I'm letting him fumble over everything. Like, keep going until finally.
Justify himself.
And finally he says, maybe I just have some outdated beliefs. He said that to me.
Oh, wow.
That's great.
And
That's
I was
amazing.
like, I really respect that you said that, man. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that you shared that. So just like creating the space, I wasn't judging him. I didn't care that he had those beliefs because I know it was born out of ignorance, and then like just allowing him to feel what he was saying and to actually connect to whether or not he really believes that. Because most people who say stuff like this don't truly believe it. It's just learnt behavior or whatever.
Of course, yeah. That's right. That's what I say. It does start like having to make sure our kids know what this means and identify all of these emotions that you're going through and be able to, be honest with what you want to say because this is how we'll change the world. I mean, my wife's she's a children's psychologist, so psychologist. Yeah. So we're firm believers on like this. Now my son's 3. It's like these are the prime time moments of human development.
Yeah.
Is up to the age of, I think she said 7 or 9 or something like that, where then he'll start grooming some stuff out of his head and being able to really maneuver through the world. And so I finally thought of a funny story about, just the whole tradie culture again. I think I can't remember. I think I was like 19. And we finished the Friday. They do these things. The tradesmen do these things Friday afternoon after work. They clock off early and go to see like a skimpy bar or something.
Right.
Oh
okay.
my God. The most revolting thing. And like I said no. I've said no the entire year. They just say, yeah, we're going. I'm like, I'm not going. And they were like, just come with us. Just go one time and we'll stop asking you. So I was like, all right, I'll come for 1 hour. Let's see what this is about. Like, and you walk into the bar and all of them are still dressed in their tradesman clothes. I'm like, all right, so we didn't get changed. We're not getting changed. We don't shower. And this is where I'm like in my head. This is me in my head. I don't say this out loud because of course I'm like, this is just what I would want to do if we're going to go out and have a nice time. I want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
But then, so then the stripper comes out and she starts dancing and all this. And I'm just watching all these men it just seems like I'm in the dark ages.
Yeah,
where
right.
these guys are just like drinking, talking, and I'm just sitting there commenting. And then I started saying some of the stuff out loud in my head.
Right.
And I was like, yo, like, are we all just what are we doing? He's like, we're drinking and with this. And I was like, man, that like, this isn't right. This can't be right. And he's like, dude, shut up. Just watch and this. And I was like, all right. I was like, I didn't get an invite after that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah. I was like, I was trying to be open, but that was a bit too open then. I was like, no, I don't want to do this.
I think it's that question, right? What are we doing here? Yeah. What is this? Like, sexist comment after comment after comment in a WhatsApp thread. And all it takes is one like, what? GIF? Like, I've done this where it's just like a what's going on here GIF. And I've been told then privately from a member, hey, dude, like, why do you got to be such a buzzkill for?
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
it.
was that your buzz?
Yeah,
like,
wow.
is that buzz for you? And if one GIF can throw you off the rails, then surely that's not a really ironclad buzz. Like, so I think it's the ability to ask that question. I think that can help derail those things a little bit and encourage someone to maybe ask that question themselves, right? It's
let it be known it wasn't about the stripper. It wasn't about like what she was doing, but it was more about like them talking not down to her, because like one would come out and be like, she's got no tits or something like that,
right.
and the next one will come out and she's like, oh yeah, but her like just fully. I'm like, dude, you're well overweight. She wouldn't want to be with you even if you wanted to be with. It's like it doesn't like. Why are we talking like this and making these weird statements and it's just all the conversations just didn't seem appropriate.
Right.
And I think there is a distinction here. So it's obviously an ecosystem that has operated for how long, right?
Yeah.
Lustful man after a day of work or going out to war in the medieval ages, right? Coming and then wanting to enjoy the female form in some variety, and that's a social activity. I think personally, I don't really go for it. I don't see the appeal. I probably will never get it dragged into a strip club or anything. But to know that has existed and seems to operate all in well, but then that's that ecosystem, right? But I think what we're recognizing here is that there is a problem where that bleeds out. Like those kinds of that kind of commentary there is not limited to that situation in which it might be deemed accessible. I don't know if it's acceptable there or if it's appropriate to be commenting on the physique of someone when you obviously don't give a shit about yours.
And I even mentioned, I was like, bro, that's somebody's daughter. Like, you can't just talk to her like talk about them like that. And that's when they were like, bro, like, this isn't how it works here. And
Don't bring reality into the situation.
exactly.
Block that
they made it into like this fantasy world where they could just go around and do whatever they want.
Which is probably exactly what they're doing when they sing along to Kanye and they use the words. Like they're in their own world and they've created a reality where this is okay to do.
Yeah, that's very interesting you say that, because like I know a lot of people who bump Wu-Tang and have never sold drugs, or bumped Onyx and never gangbang.
Right.
But somehow they've connected to it, you know? And that's where, that's very strange to me.
For sure. And okay, so I guess like dismantling that. So, all right, so you're right. They're like, there's reality and then this is our fantasy world. And then the sad part is when you take the fantasy world and bring it back into reality, you refuse to allow reality in, right? These guys are refusing to
Ready Player One.
Oh man, I need to watch this film. Everyone's
you haven't seen it?
No, man.
Bruh,
all right, okay, cool. I got to make it happen. So people are refusing to allow reality in and they're taking the fantasy out into the world because then they're on the construction site. They're meant to be working. This is the purpose for which they're here. But a woman walks past in like professional gear because she's on the way from like the courtroom back to her legal offices and, you know, doesn't have time for this nonsense. And they're going to still make the same commentary that they were making for a dancer when they were there, you know, last weekend.
That's true.
The same then applies in this musical context. And I think the difference is like the ability to ask these questions and understand like, why is it problematic to make those comments?
Right.
And I think some guys don't understand why, because it's not happened to them. So I guess like wanting to bring it back to the conversation around specifically the N-word, if you don't mind. Like I think one thing that could be really useful for anyone that's watching and like even for me, like to be able to call it out more specifically and with a greater degree of like assertiveness is an understanding of what is the power of this word? Like, why is it problematic? And recognizing that here in Australia, like there is such a removal and such a distance from that dynamic. Like, I guess, you know, having born and raised in Seattle, is that right?
Well, funnily enough, I've spent the same amount of time in Seattle than I have here.
Right.
So I'm like in the middle now.
For sure.
So like, yes and no.
For sure. But in terms of like where it carries weight, American culture and Black American culture is you know so charged around, especially the N-word. But then in terms of music, in terms of the difference of like engaging in wider American culture and purely Black American culture.
Yeah. So like I was even having this conversation with my sister as well, and I know I agree with her side too because they said we've rebranded that name.
Right.
You know, we've rebranded it. We've made it our own, and now we've kind of own it. We own this word for us to use with each other. No one else can use it, and that's just how we've managed to make it. And I completely, I agree. I was like, oh, yeah, that's great. I said, but to me, I said the core root of it still holds an energy.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when you hold that, and why can't we make something ours that is ours and we own it as well, but it's not something that's so been ran through the mud or created for us in a negative form.
Yeah.
You know, and then you've got KRS-One who has said something about it being used by Black people before it was used by white people. I don't know. I haven't done that research, but he said that we've used it before. Then like there's always something coming out where they're just gonna either say yes or no. It's like it's good or it's bad. But I find that where it's at today, we have people saying the word in a derogatory way, and we get triggered.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we're getting triggered, but making the music that's getting sent out to these kids, what are we gonna do?
It's a difficult situation.
Yeah.
Can I, if you don't mind sharing, like I realize that this can be really deeply personal, but in terms of saying that someone can be triggered by hearing the word misused in the wrong context, and so your experience of being on the work site, hearing it being sung so flagrantly, that triggering, what does that feel like? Because I think for people to understand what that actually then feels like might help to recognize like, oh shit, I thought I was just like singing along to the lyrics. I thought it was some karaoke shit. And I thought I could get away with it, but I didn't know it's having this impact. So what is that effect?
Okay, well, I guess it goes into, do you believe in intergenerational trauma?
Yes.
I'm beginning to understand it a little bit more, so I'm curious to know.
Okay, so intergenerational trauma is something that's happened in, say, my life, and then I have a child. I have passed DNA through to him where he is experiencing the trauma that I've been through. Right? So, for example, if I've gone through something really traumatic in my life that's affected my life, my entire life, he could have anxiety whenever something happens to him that's somewhat in that light. I may not be explaining it the best, but what happens when you have generations and generations and generations of trauma happening to you as your ancestors treating you like, being treated as slaves, as segregated people, not 1/6 of a man, you know, like all of these things that's happened through their lives. Like I see my grandmother, she is completely traumatized because she grew up in the segregated areas where her mother was probably a slave. You know, it's not that long ago.
No.
So I see why my grandmother has somewhat she doesn't express it, but I can see somewhat hate towards white people,
Right.
that I am fortunate enough not to fully fully carry.
Yeah.
But it does go down to my father, who then, whenever it's told to him, I see his hair stand up and he's bald. So I can see it just triggers him in a way and drops down to me, which I still feel triggered in a way. You know, it may not be said, like if it's said to me, that's a different trigger. That's a deeper trigger.
Yeah.
But when it's being said, it still feels a way. And that's kind of what happens, is like trying to heal these traumas in our lives now so that we don't pass it on. You know, imagine getting beat for 400 years, you know, and we're still beating our kids. And we think that that's what parenting is. We've classed it as parenting, but before slavery, we weren't beating our kids.
Right.
That wasn't how we disciplined our children, but we got taught, I mean, and this goes into another conversation, but we got taught through religion and through all these things after everything got fucked up that we are now, this is how we raise children, you know? And you're kind of keeping, I mean, if you read the Willie Lynch letter, which a lot of rappers speak about, Kendrick has spoke about it before.
Sure.
I've said it a couple times. It's a letter that a slave owner wrote to other slave owners on how to keep their slaves in line.
Right.
And it showed I read the whole letter too. I read the whole thing, and it really it shined a light on how it's still working in today's society.
Right.
And that's where that shit needs to be killed. Like, without me knowing that, I won't be able to go against it.
Right.
So the awareness now is, okay, I see what he said here, and I can see it being changed to today's modern society, and we need to go against that.
Right. So you can see echoes of it in legislation, in
That's
workplace
right.
policies where workplaces don't enshrine the right to not be discriminated against based on race. Coming back to the triggers real quickly, just because what I'm hearing is it already is a double trigger. You're raised in a society and you're told that you're less than because of the color of your skin. And this word is used to make you feel less than.
That's right.
So in this lifetime, you already have that much power attached to the word and other words. Mind you, it's not limited to a single terminology. There's so much coding that can go on in the way that this can be done. But then I think as I'm beginning to understand intergenerational trauma, not only are you hearing it for yourself, but you're actually hearing your dad
From my ancestors.
and your grandmother and her mother, and you're hearing all of them
cry
each time that word gets said to you, and you
That's right.
feel your dad's hair on end, you feel your grandmother cry, you feel her mother not being able to respond because if she was a slave,
She could get killed.
she could get killed. So all of that is happening to you in that moment in your body.
Bro, you aced that. That was it. You smoked that. You're really good at that. Yeah, that was great. That's exactly what I was trying to say. But I made it way longer.
No, man, you told it, and I feel it. I feel it, man.
That's great.
I hope whoever's watching and listening, I hope you feel this because it's not to be taken lightly. And I think I really appreciate the education that I'm getting right now from your lived experience because looking at, I literally have tears in my eyes.
Me too.
Like watching and running like rap karaoke, like just to bring it into sort of a modern context. To me, that's an exercise first and foremost in like, how do we perform? How do we get on a stage and wear a persona and embody a thing? And then the rule number one is like, do not use the N-word.
Yeah.
Here in Australia, here in Melbourne, as like, you know, I consider myself fairly, to a certain extent, whitewashed in my culture. Like I don't walk around in a shalwar kameez. Like I don't speak Sindhi as my first language, even though it is my first tongue. I speak English and all that kind of stuff.
I apologize for calling it Arabic. That's incorrect, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So
my
Sindhi.
bad.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thank you. And how do we still engage in this genre that gives us so much power, that gives us a platform to express and share of ourselves into this unified space? And how do we do it without making it problematic? And I think the first one is we stop saying this word. And I've been happy to carry that across from the hip hop karaoke guys into when we're doing Rappers Delight and bring that in and say, you know, we're not going to do it. But today's armed me with a lot more impetus as to why not. And I really appreciate that. So I think it is ongoing. I guess like to kind of move it along. The one thing I've debated is it okay, let's say if you were to come along to rap karaoke and if you were to do if you were to do Gold Digger, like for me as the facilitator to say no one is allowed to say the N-word, is it problematic for me to say that and tell you in that context, not, and like purely about your feeling? I think we're not trying to arrive at an academic, objective reality, but how would you feel if I said to you, you can't say that word in this context?
It's funny because I kind of put myself in if I was in America, if I was here, here, I wouldn't use it. Like you're asking someone who stopped using it.
Right.
So it doesn't affect me. I wasn't going to use it to begin with.
Yeah.
If I was someone else, say if I was like, I can already tell you if it was my cousin, he would tell me, you're not going to tell me what I can and can't say if that's my word. They, like I said, America's took the word and they made it theirs, and I love that there's a communal thing that we've created to do that, because if we can do that, then we should be able to do that within our communities. We should be able to do that in other aspects. So if you can stay strong on that, then of course, do that. But if you tell someone else, like me, like I'm saying, you could tell me that, I would respect it, because I look around, all I see is white people. If I'm going to say this word and then tell them they can't say it, I'm already like outnumbered.
Right.
If I'm in America and there's all these black people and you come out and say no one can use the N-word, like it's a bit different. You can say, you might, and it sucks because you would have to say all the white people or non-blacks can't say the N-word, because you're not, it depends on where you are. You're here in Melbourne, you're here in Australia, where they don't know the depth of that word, whereas in America they're well equipped and you probably wouldn't need to say it. Although Kendrick has gone through that already, so you just never know. But it depends on where you are. It really depends. Like if you were in LA, you're not going to tell a room full of black people that they can't. Like you yourself are not going to tell a room full of black people we're not using that word. Maybe a black guy can tell everyone else we're going to avoid using this word because we see mixed, we see the diversity and all that, and they may respect it. But I'm saying, other people of other cultures and other, you can't. You can't.
Yeah.
Right on.
I don't have anything to say. I'm trying to take this all in. I think like the main thing that is really hitting me right now is like just the lack of education. And when I say education, I don't mean reading a book. I mean feeling the feelings involved and the heaviness that this word carries. Like education is more like acknowledgement. It's more understanding, empathy. That's what we need. We need people to feel, rather than just read a book and be like, this was the history. Like that's so dry and so disconnected. Like we need to understand how it feels.
That's why we make the music we make.
Right?
That's where it is. I mean, Sadhguru said it. He said, you could read all the books in the library and still be a knowledgeable idiot.
Right.
He said, you just because you read a book doesn't make you educated.
Right.
Experience makes you educated. Understanding, going out and meeting, I feel bad that I called your language, your native tongue, something completely different.
Sure.
But like I wouldn't be able, and you can say that wasn't my intention. My intention wasn't to disrespect you. Precisely. I was arrogant and I just didn't ignorant to it. I don't know. And it's fine to say you don't know.
Yeah.
Because being corrected, then if you're going to make the change, at least you're trying.
Yes.
That's the best part about the conversation.
Yeah.
Have the conversation. I wrote Freeze because my cousin was murdered by the Portland police. And then I'm saying, why are you telling me to pray and telling him to pray? Like when it's guns that are doing this and we're really not getting anywhere by just praying.
Yeah.
We need to have a conversation. And it's happened. I mean, from then to now, there's been hundreds, if not thousands, of black and indigenous, if we're talking about Australia, being treated less than.
Yeah. I feel like it's almost a disservice to have anything to say after this entire conversation because like so much has been said and I just want to acknowledge it and I want to pay respect to this conversation right here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, in terms of discussion, we're sort of out ahead. I feel like I just want to open up to you if there's sort of parting or closing thoughts that you want to share with people listening, or if there's somewhere else or something else on your mind or something that's come up that you do want to share while we still have the space.
It's been such a deep and heavy conversation. Have you heard the new Sorry Not Sorry by Nas and Jay-Z?
No,
I've seen glimpses.
I was like, let's lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah.
I just thought that came out the other day, and I was like thinking,
nice.
I need to listen to it. But I listened to Sorry Not Sorry. I was trying to. I asked on Facebook some friends. I was just asking people if the line that Jay-Z opened up with, if it went over my head, because he literally just said something about like, I just got this other B. People still confused about the other B, and I was like, is this? And then I was trying to understand, but it actually just talking about the billions he's actually made.
Yeah,
and I was like, is it just billions? Because if that's the case, then I mean, in factual, it is factual, so it is hard.
Yeah.
But the line itself was weak, which was my conversation. It was like, I was like, and then he said, oh, and don't forget the other B, and then Beyonce said, hey, and I was like, oh, that was clever. That fourth B, but he just kept saying the B, and I was like, is he just talking about billions?
Yeah.
But it is true. He's made like 3 billion in these last couple of years. So I was like, it's a hard bar because it's actual facts.
Yeah.
But it was just soft because I'm like, a lyricist wouldn't just say, I got a billy here, I got a billion here. It's just, that's what I was trying to lighten it up because I mean, we could talk about these topics and it's not us that needs to have the conversation. It's, the other side too.
Yeah.
Right.
We need to understand where they're coming from and why they do what they do. And of course, maybe they have a whole nother perspective.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to people who've told me, I didn't know, I had school friends that had swastika phone cases.
Shit.
On their phones. Wow. And I was like, do you know what this is? He's like, yeah, the neo-Nazis and all. Like, they were like, and then they were looking at me like, it's nothing.
Wow.
It's like nothing. It was a full-on phone case. Like, someone made it.
Yeah.
To them, it was like having the Targaryen crest. They were like, oh, this is just like a cool thing from this thing I read.
Yeah. And like, I was like, and it wasn't even my sort of, it wasn't really targeted to me because that was the neo-Nazis trying to go after, the Jewish community.
Sure.
And I was like, this is so crazily offensive.
Yeah.
How is this even in the school? Like, how are we allowed to have this in the school?
That's mental.
And that's the thing. We don't know. We're not having these conversations with these people.
Yep.
And maybe they don't want to have the conversations. There's that TV show called Hate Thy Neighbor. Have you seen it?
Hate Thy Neighbor, no.
So this comedian, and it's funny because he kind of looks everything. Like, he looks a little bit black, he looks a little bit white, he looks a little bit like he could be passed as Jewish, he could pass as Arab. Like, he kind of look like everyone.
Yeah.
But he had a show, I think it was on Vice or SBS or something, and he went to all these extremist communities,
Right.
Wow.
and had the conversation. It's like, so why do you do this? And like fully like ask, like open the doors.
Yeah.
And then when he went to like America with the KKK and all that, he actually got invited to a cross burning.
Wow.
And he got to like, and then the Klan members, a lot of them weren't agreeance to him being there. So then they made him stay up at the top of the hill to watch the burning. And he's trying to get people's like perspective. And I think he managed to befriend one of the guys. And then later on, he dropped out.
Wow.
Yeah, right.
That's
That's what I think is the best thing to do, is just have a conversation with them, be open.
Yep.
And of course, you may absolutely disagree with what they're saying, but at least be able to try and acknowledge that you're listening to them, because that's where the change will happen.
Yeah.
That's where the change will come. I'm never going to fight somebody for being like racist. I'm never gonna unless you're putting physical harm into me and my family, then I'm not doing it. Because I'm not gonna confirm what you already think of me. I'm not gonna allow all of the things that you've been saying negative about me to be like, see, told you, they're violent, they're this, they're that, I'm like, I know that's not going to get the job done.
Absolutely.
You know, there was a story. I'm ranting. Sorry.
No,
there
you're
was
so
a
good,
story
man.
about I can't remember his name, but it was a clan leader,
Yep.
and how he dropped out because of the only black guy in their town.
Right.
You know, they were trying to scare him, like when they moved in, and the dude was just being just witty and funny, and just like telling they'd be standing outside with the clans, like, what's the word, robes, and he would come out and say, guys, Halloween's in October, come back later, I don't have any candy, and then close the door, right? And like, it's very brave of him to do that.
Yeah.
But the one thing that really caught everyone off was they were eating dinner, and him and his family were eating dinner, and the whole Klansman came in and was like, look, we're really sick of you coming out here thinking you can do what we do and eat where we eat and all that. So he's like, so I'm going to make a promise. He said, whatever you do to that chicken that you guys have, we're going to do to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took the chicken and he kissed it. And everyone laughed. Everyone was laughing.
so
They all like went outside. They were dying. They were all laughing. Like, and then in that moment, he got his family up and said, all right, Johnny, I'll see you next time. See you later, guys. Bye. And got in the car and drove off.
Yep.
And then that's when the Klan's leader said, we never mess with him again.
That's amazing.
He said, we just left him alone.
Wow.
Kiss a chicken.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was a really touching story, and like it rang to me because I'm like, he was in danger.
Yep.
Every single encounter, he was in danger, and he kept his cool.
Wow.
He made it somewhat funny, and like just treated him. I mean, and not everyone deserves that type of respect.
No,
and you're never gonna. I mean, you may not ever get that opportunity to do that because you may be scared. Like, we react differently to tense times.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm not saying don't crack your mama joke to a Klansman when he's trying to intimidate you.
Yeah.
But it's just saying, like, there's alternative ways of maneuvering through that. And sometimes fleeing is it. Like, maybe maybe it's too much. You have to think about your family.
Yeah.
You have to think about a lot of stuff and changing the world. You know, that's how a lot of our leaders have passed.
Yeah.
They put the cause before their family.
Yeah.
And like, as much as I respect and love them for it, like, there has to be another way.
Yeah.
I don't want to die for the cause.
Yeah.
I want to raise my family in a way where they'll be able to bring more light
Yep.
to the cause.
Yeah.
And they can't do that if I'm not here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Beautifully put.
I really resonate with what you've said, and it's you know, smack bang in the heart of a poem or a song that I wrote a while back. And if you don't mind me sharing it,
For sure.
It's off the back. I've just ripped this really hard, continuous, lyrical, conscious stuff about like almost that militant, pacifistic, but we need to take the fight to the oppressor. And the sort of the final thing is like, bring children closer, whisper in their ear that love trumps hate. And I kind of let that ring out, and then I go, but if love trumps hate, we have to love trumps hate. Only together can we make love great again. Make a friend, take the hand of an enemy that you can see is hateful, and hold on until we understand. The pain, the hurt, the fear that they're feeling. Erase the curses to begin the healing. Hear the silent cries that go unheard, and wipe away the tears and give comfort. And be ready to just love.
That's beautiful.
God damn it.
And I think I love every time I connect with someone who has that same idea, is like, we can't, what is it? Love, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that.
Yeah.
You know, darkness and darkness. In that same vein, like we can't go and fight people that are only hating us, right? If their hate stops at their nose, why are we there trying to like bash their skulls in, telling them you're wrong?
Yeah.
Because then that only confirms that bias. So I really appreciate that we've been able to connect on that. It's massive. To draw a connection as well on the Jay-Z Connect, and kind of coming back to our really early conversation, back in 2010 or 2011, I did a tour through the NT with a youth organization I used to be involved in.
Nice.
And that was awesome. It was with the Australian youth representative to the UN. And this guy was on a consultation tour, Dan Ryan, phenomenal human being. we were consulting as many young people. The goal was 50,000 young Australians to have their voices compiled in a report to deliver at the United Nations. And as we're going through the NT, we stopped in at Tennant Creek High School. And one of the conversations we had with the teachers was like, the kids here, you know, majority Indigenous population, especially in this public school, they're starting to have this awakening about their self-worth and self-empowerment that the local society is not affording them, but they're finding it through the internet and through music. And very specifically name dropping the album Watch the Throne, which was this like, you know, this championing of black excellence. There's literally tracks like Murder to Excellence. You know, now we're seeing more tuxedos like rising to the top, more black Americans in tuxedos and things like that. And it just hit me in that moment. It was like, right, hip hop doesn't exclusively speak to one culture in one place. That, you know, that kids in Tennant Creek in Australia and the Northern Territory can engage with it in that way and feel empowered and feel okay about the things that they own and that they're allowed to own good things. They're allowed to expect good in life, I think was really touching and powerful. So I think we shouldn't take lightly the music that we made, talking at the start about the messages that we inject in our music. We shouldn't aim them just at our peers. We should recognize that young people and people outside of our culture and our community are going to engage with these ideas. We should watch our words, because recognizing the language has power, and if it bleeds out and other people choose to use our words incorrectly, like that can be so problematic. And ultimately recognizing that like it's by sitting down and having conversations with people who challenge our ideas, challenge our conception of love, of togetherness, and of community, that I think we build communities that are reconciled and that engage across the spectrum for everyone. So I just kind of wanted to bring together, I think, everything that we've spoken on, and if there's anything else that, you know, you guys want the people at home to take away.
Keep going. This is the problem, is that I can keep going. I wanted to add on to what you were saying, because the what you're saying is absolutely true. And if you look at Hove's catalog, it started off with the drug dealing and all that. I think there's it's so hard because it's so open, you know? We've got kids who are rapping, you know, 1-4, for example. These guys are rapping their lives. This is true. It's in light, it's negative, but that's their truth. Now, they've gone into a position now where they're in power, right? I don't see them maturing up now, but 10 years from now, they may be in suit and ties. And that's what is like, it's a shame, because we found a way to get out of the like the slums that we come from. We found ways where everything was against us. I can't hate on people who are drug dealers in a low socioeconomic place, because there were no other options for them at that time. You can't say, everyone's talking about, I don't know the word, if it's socialism or where everyone's the same, and I don't believe in that. That's where the right are wrong, are right when they say no one should be the same, because a Tyler is not the same as another trade, you know. Some deserve to be a bit more because they're a bit harder. But when you think about how these guys have made it in, even Hove, even who else is there? 1-4, all these guys, they've come in by talking about the fucked up shit that's happening in their lives, and then in hopes that they become mature later on and talk into some real, not real because that's real to them now, but something where it could relate to older crews. But right now they're targeting the youngsters, and the youngsters, they may not go through it, but they love that stuff, because their lives are exaggerated anyway. You know, they may think that the guy who's bullying them is the guy that is, you know, the guys that they stabbed, their bullies, their ops, and their like the all that stuff they put in and they insert it into their lives. Now I know my music is for people who have bills, you know, who have responsibilities to take care of, and I've accepted that, because that's just what I like making, and that's where I'm at in my life. You know, if you look back to when I was 17, I was writing really dark, you know, just stuff, because I thought that my life was just so dark at that time. So when you say like we have to know what we're writing and all that, it's true. I think it's more about being ourselves, being ourselves more than trying to get on, because if I don't be myself, I'm not going to get anywhere. You know, if I was to say, if I started rapping about, you know, what 1-4 rap about. I'm not being myself. No. Now I may get attention, but that's not me. And I would never. I'm not at that point. I'm not at that point. I don't think I'll ever be now. Especially I'm 31. I'm not trying to. I don't want ops. I'm not trying to do that.
Yep.
So it's yeah. I think it's more just being who you are and trying to get people to see your life in a different perspective. Because maybe someone doesn't see your side quite clearly, and if you can articulate it like that poem, that beautiful poem you just did, like you said. Love trumps hate. Trump. How do you say?
If love trumps hate, we have to love trumps hate.
Yes. See that? Like even that. I've got friends who, a lot of friends who hate Trump. I've got friends who support Trump, but they don't say it because it'll ostracize them as well.
Right.
And I don't know. I just know politics are shit anyway. But
right. Yep.
I can't say I hate or love someone if I don't know who they actually are.
Right.
The news will portray someone. Fox News try to portray Kendrick as like a terrorist.
Yeah.
But we've got people who actually run through the Capitol not being that news came and went within 3 days.
Yeah.
But Kendrick's line when he was performing on top of a police car was on the front line for almost 2 weeks. So I can't trust what people are saying about someone. Yeah. And whereas like you can go to another news station and they're saying the exact opposite, and then that's their truth.
Right.
Yeah.
So where do we stand? Who do we believe? That's where it's like we have to find alternatives. We can't think of the masses where these guys are businesses. Whatever fits their program or whatever fits their agenda is what they're going to tell you and make you afraid of. And that goes with anything. All right, I'm done.
Amazing. Look, I think it's so deep that it feels like we've scratched the surface, and like that surface scratch feels so deep to the core of me.
Yeah.
I think to you means that this is an ongoing conversation. This is a social change that needs to be enacted. So DT,
just hit me up another time. We'll come back.
Yeah, gladly, man, gladly.
We barely spoke about music.
And that's the glory of getting to have conversations and being honest. Thank you so much for being you and being honest in this space about it.
Of course.
I feel very much myself in that. I feel so out of my depth, and I feel okay being out of my depth here, right? It's like recognizing that means that I'm getting an education.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing that insight and education in the way you spoke about. I didn't need to read a book about this. I just allowed myself to be open and feel what you were feeling. So thank you for sharing it. Really.
Right. Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
such a joy.
I know it's so long overdue because I mean, you've hit me up so many times, and I felt bad because at the times you were hitting me was just not. I wasn't in the right mental space, and I knew I wanted to do this for so long, and I love that you were patient with me and allowed me to get through what I needed to get through.
Of course,
and I had a great time. Both of you guys was great.
Thank you so much for coming down and like educating us, like Mash said, not based on like some kind of arbitrary historic reference, but like real feelings that you're experiencing. I really appreciate that you were honest and open, and I think everyone watching will definitely take so much away from this conversation.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Strictly DT, aka Tyler the Creator, for all your Melbourne-based tiling needs. Hit your boy up. Thank you so much, DT.
Thank you,
Amutha, MQ. This is Vibe Union, podcast number 29. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe, and please share this episode with anyone that you think can benefit from this conversation, which hopefully should be everyone. Have a fantastic week. We'll catch you in the next week. Much love.
See you guys.